Thank you for joining me today. Welcome back to my channel, and I am here to share my top reads and all the books I read, but mostly focusing on my top reads of the year. And I'm really excited to go over this with you all and kind of look back on my year of reading. So, my top read in January for adult was Under the Whispering Door, but I read a lot of really good books. Under the Whispering Door is one that I will constantly recommend to everyone, and it's a beautiful story. TJ Klune is the author, but also I love Call Us What We Carry by Amanda Gorman. Of Women and Salt was beautiful by Gabriela Garcia. The Silent Patient was a mind-blowing thriller, and Malibu Rising was also a really good story. The Collective was also a good thriller, and I really enjoyed all of these books. For young adults, I read 4 books. My top was this one, And Burned All the Bright by Jason Reynolds and Jason Griffin. And this is a piece of art. I mean, it's 3 sentences, I believe, and Jason Reynolds wrote the sentences, and then Jason Griffin did the artwork, and it was all during COVID, and so this book is just kind of a historical artifact on COVID and kind of their take on everything that happened in 2020 is beautiful. And then I also read Survive the Dome, which is dystopian again by E. Lockhart, and Out of Darkness, which were all really enjoyable reads as well. For middle grade, I always read a lot more middle grade, and so picking a favorite was hard, but my favorite was How to Find What You're Not Looking For. It was told in second person, and so any teachers out there or writers, this is a great mentor text for second person because Vera did a phenomenal job. I also got to feature her on Legit Kid Lit, and so you should check out that episode. But such talent, and I enjoyed the story. It's historical fiction as well. And then if you need a good laugh, Dweeb Club by Betsy Uhrig was pretty hilarious. And then a couple that read like classics are The Wolf's Curse and Snake Falls to the Earth. They both are very folk-tale-y animals, and I enjoyed that. And then a powerful graphic novel that I think everyone should read is Borders. Also a great book. My picture books for January. I read 3 biographies, which I do enjoy nonfiction picture books. Nina, the Leaf Detective, and A True Wonder were all fantastic. And then if you need good laughs with little ones, Unstoppable and Dear Dragon are both fantastic. I read those with my daughter. And then in January, I decided to start a reading blanket. Some people do temperature blankets, so every row means something. I started a reading blanket, so every row is a book, and the colors are there and what they stand for. So I started working on that, and I'll show you the progress I've made on that, which is not much. So that is January. All right, for February, I read 5 adult books, and I would have to say, oh man, my favorite, the most engaging book would have been The Last Mrs. Parrish. That one I buddy read, and it was like a page turner. I listened to it, but still, you know what I mean. But I would say in terms of importance, the 1619 Project or A Burning were both really good and really valuable. So yeah, that's a hard one, but we'll go with The Last Mrs. Parrish as the top read. And then for young adult, hands down, Me Moth was my favorite book. It's in the top reads of the year. It's a book in verse, and there's a twist, and I didn't see it coming, and I loved it. Flew through that book. I sent it to some friends, like, hey, you should read this book. They flew through them. I mean, we're all ready for the next a book by the author, and yes, like amazing. I Must Betray You and Beasts of Prey were both really good as well, but of course, Nemoth won. I love books in verse. For middle grade, I read a lot more. Favorite book was The Last Quintista, followed quickly by The Troubled Girls of Dragomir Academy. The Last Quintista sci-fi, and you don't get too much of that, this kind of sci-fi, in middle grade, and I just really think Donna's writing is lyrical and beautiful, and again, lots of twists. And then The Troubled Girls was also a very good magic story. Magical and Perfect, that was a reread with some students, which will always make it a favorite now because I can remember what we talked about. And then the others were really great books too. Nicole Collier's Just Right Jillian, I think it was her debut, super adorable. Sharon Draper came out with a sequel to Out of My Mind, which was Out of My Heart. Over and Out by Jenny L. Walsh, who I also interviewed on Legit Kidlit, and then The Indigenous Peoples History of the United States. Just a very valuable resource. And then for picture books, I read The Egg Is Mine, which was an arc, and it was hilarious. And so was It's Not Jack and the Beanstalk. Those stories are always fun. And then one I really enjoyed, it was very creative, was The ABC of Black History, and a good book to have on hand. It was just a great read. And then making a little progress with my reading blanket, as you can see there. That's February. So here are my books for March. My top read was Mouse. I read the 2 books in that graphic novel series. They came across my radar when they were commonly banned books in this area, and so I thought I would see what was going on. These were very powerful stories, memoirs, and I think everyone should read them. I also read They Drown Our Daughters, which was a good thriller, and then The Henna Artist, which took me a while to get into. It was worth it in the end, but I'm glad I listened to it, because otherwise I think I might have not wanted to finish it. It was just a lot more than just kind of drawn out, I guess, than I expected. For young adults, it was a great young adult month. My favorite was Girls with Sharp Sticks. It kind of reminded me of the Dragomir, Troubled Girls of Dragomir Society, which I read in February. Kind of a similar thing about girls and their power. I also, another kind of on the same thread, maybe, Genuine Fraud. Also kind of a disturbing book. And gosh, I read some good books here. Lore, Olympus was great. The House of Sky and Breath. Oh, and that ending. I can't wait for the 3rd book. I need to reread the 2, and then the 3rd when it comes out. Children of Virtue and Vengeance. That book kind of like waned for me. It wasn't as good as the Children of Blood and Bone, but then the ending, like why it's left off like that. I hated it. I need the next one. And then I started Court of Thorns and Roses. I think I've read this one before, but I started a reread to read the rest of the series. And then a great and powerful book was Nothing Burns as Bright as You, about kind of like toxic friendships. It was an arc as well, and it was really good. Sorry, I couldn't stop talking about those young adult books. And then for middle grade, my top reads were Santiago's Road Home and The Ogress and the Orphans. The Ogress and the Orphans is kind of like a folktale, fairy tale, classic, very engaging story. It's good messages. Santiago I listened to that book. It was from Libro FM, and then I ended up being able to interview the author for my Legit Kidlit, and it's a great story about the migration to America and everything that can happen along the way, but told in a middle grade voice, so not, not as mature. Beast in the Bethany was, those are fun. Those are funny books. Casternauts are also funny, and then Fast Pitch by Nick Stone was really great. It was a hard one to pick even two favorites there. So if I picked a third, it would have been Fast Pitch. And then picture books. I only read one, and it was with my daughter. The Case of the Stinky Stench. I love these books. They're so much fun. And then my reading blanket. Not much progress. And I think I stopped tracking my progress.
So for the month of April, I read 10 2022 releases. 21 were women authors. 7 were authors not from the US. 3 were LGBTQ, and 12 were BIPOC, and then 1 was poetry. So here is a quick roundup of what they were. My top read for adult books was The Sea of Tranquility. Station 11 is still my favorite by this author, but I did enjoy Sea of Tranquility, and I kind of want to reread all of this author's books because I think there are connections between them, and I want to kind of see them better. For young adult, my top read was They Both Die at the End. I mean, hands down, one of the best books I've ever read. Love it, love it, love it. So, that one's an easy one. And for middle grade, I read a lot of books for middle grade. This one was a hard one to pick a favorite, but I did end up choosing Play Like a Girl, a graphic novel, just because it's something that not a lot of books are written about. Like graphic novels. I think this one's going to reach a wide audience, and it's such an important book about, girl power and doing things that you think you can't do. And and I also featured Misty on the on my Legit Kid Lit channel. And then for picture books, I loved Born on the Water. A great story, a great historical account of slavery and the beginnings, and just it is a powerful book. And the illustrations, the way they go from light to dark, just all of the illustrations are powerful. Dazzle Ships was also really good, but Born on the Water is a must read. So those were my books for April. Alright, for May, I read 4 books by AAPI authors and illustrators. I read 1 book I purchased, 6 arcs, and a total of 23 books. I have 4 must-reads: Becoming by Michelle Obama, and The Beautiful Country by Jane Kuo, Singing with Elephants by Margarita Engel, and Zara Hussein is here, and the author of that, Sabina Khan. So I really, out of all of those books, Singing with Elephants and Beautiful Country are middle grade, Becoming is adult, and Zara Hussein is young adult. And then I read other books, of course, several adult reads, 6 of them. I also love True Biz. That was a really enlightening book about sign language. And then I also really loved In the Wild Light. It's a young adult book. A lot of people recommended that one to me, and it's well worth the read. And then middle grade books, there were so many. Out of the Dust, I read with some students. That is one of my all-time favorite books from whenever I was a kid. And Aquanaut was a fun graphic novel by Dan Santat, and Lightfall was really beautiful as well. Saying names incorrectly. Another middle grade novel that I thought was really great was The Natural Genius of Ants. That one was sent to me by the author, and it was a really good story. A lot of value. And then I read one book. There's something adorable with my daughter.
I read 7 audiobooks, 57 books on total. 4 books I bought, 4 LGBTQ, and 41 ARCs. Like, who am I here? So I'll show you what all that was. But my must-reads include Viola Davis's memoir, Finding Me. That is my adult recommendation. Frizzy and Thirst are the middle grade recommendations, both really fantastic books about things that like I learned new things in each book. You Are Not Alone was my picture book pick, and then All Boys Aren't Blue was my young adult choice. Other books I read in adult, I read several others. The Glass Hotel was also a really fun book, and Beautiful Country. Like, I read a lot of great adult books, and then same with young adult. It was hard to choose a favorite because I love This Place Is Still Beautiful. I loved We Are Not From Here. African Town, She Gets the Girl. Those are all great. You'll Be the Death. Like, all of these are 5-star reads, so you can't go wrong with any of those. Middle grade was pretty similar. I read some really great books. Skandar is a big one this year, but Frizzy kind of won it. And then I read 30 picture books, so that's where I got 41 books, because I knocked out so many picture book arcs. And like I said, my favorite was You Are Not Alone, but Language of Trees was a really cool book, especially for people who like science. The Little Library, or The Little House of Hope, was a really cool book. My Tree. And then there was one more that I really loved. Black Girl Rising. Like, that was a very good empowerment book. Room for More is super cute and a great message as well. Three Billy Goats Gruff was great. I Am Ruby Bridges was really powerful. Yeah, you can't go wrong with any of these picture books. Like, they were fantastic. So that's basically how I got to 41. And then my reading blanket, I am still going. By June, I got through February. So you can see how well that's going. Yeah. July, 5 arcs, 5 books I own, and I wanted to read 5 books I own. I only read 2. I did want to read mental health books, especially characters of color, and I did do that. So, adult reads, my favorite pick was Remarkably Bright Creatures, and that was definitely a top book of the year. It's really cool, written in different perspectives and just different characters and seeing everything connect. The Displacements was also a really fantastic book. A really cool dystopian that is super creepy because it could happen. And young adult reads, I love The Weight of Blood. I actually have a copy up there of a signed copy, and gosh, all the Stephen King Carrie vibes, I loved it. And also the Jason book, the Our Story, Our Way, Jason Reynolds and Jason, I can't remember his last name. Anyway, that book was a lot of fun. Middle grade, my favorite was In the Key of Us by Mariama Lockington. That one was a really awesome book, and mental health, people of color, that's kind of where that one fell in, and it was just a great story. Very, very magical. I love her writing style. And then I also loved Lark and the Wild Hunt by Jennifer Adams. That one is those are her books. It's the second one, are just great fantasy novels, great world building, and just super exciting. And my reading blanket hasn't changed. So I'm still, yeah, as you can see, this is kind of where I waned a little bit on the reading blanket. So August, it's hard to see in my graphic because I made it, really big and it didn't fit in here. But for August, my goal was to read 3 books I own, 3 arcs, and 3 books to help me with my writing. I did read 3 arcs and I did read 3 books to help me with my writing. Overall, I read 4 audiobooks, 13 books by women, 10 books by authors of color, 1 non-US author, 3 graphic novels, 3 novels in verse, 8 young adult, 5 middle grade, 5 adult, 10 published in 2022, 3 horror, 1 memoir, 10 realistic fiction, 3 fantasy, and 1 historical fiction. So here, the books I owned, I read The Lincoln Highway and Last Night at the Telegraph Club. I would say Last Night at the Telegraph Club is one of my top reads. I loved his beautiful book, and I would say it's young adult to adult. Arcs, I read a lot of arcs, but the first 3 I read were Barani by Michelle Cotter-Roosman. This is very much like One and Only Ivan, not only because there's a monkey, but just the treatment of primates and treatment of animals, and then some activism. And this one had, I think, 3 points of view: 1, the orangutan, and then a boy and then a girl. And it was kind of cool to see how they all worked together to get Barani where she belonged. The Getaway by Lamar Giles, super creepy horror, and I loved it. The Tryout, a graphic novel, just about cheerleading, which I loved it. I loved it. And then to help me with my writing, I read 3 novels in verse: Lawless Spaces, Samira Surfs, and Moonwalking. And then some other books I read included Age of Myth, Black Cake, which is another favorite, Meet Me in the Margins, All My Rage was amazing, Curse of the Night Witch, The Mary Shelley Club, which kind of, this is where I'm starting to read a lot of horror books. Mara, Tidebreaker was another graphic novel. It Happened One Summer, Flamer, and My Best Friend's Exorcism, another horror novel. So I think this becomes a trend, if I remember right. September was another good month, even though I, was back to work. 6 books I own, 7 arcs, 2 books by Latinx authors, 7 middle grade, and 7 young adults, so a total of 21. My top reads were Haven Jacob Saves the Planet by Barbara D. She is always a favorite. She has a fantastic middle grade voice. For young adult, I chose Mirror Girls, which was by Kelly McWilliams. She wrote Astrid and then, oh my goodness, something, Agnes at the End of the World, which was a fantastic dystopian pandemic read, but beautiful, and I loved it. And Mirror Girls is so good, so good. And then for adult, I loved Wake, The Hidden History of Women-Led Slave Results. It's a graphic novel. I put adult because of the content. It was wonderful, and I think it should be read by everyone. Like, it was eye-opening. For some of the books I owned: Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, Lessons in Chemistry. Other arcs I read: Attack of the Black Rectangles. By the way, I love Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, and I love Lessons in Chemistry. Also great books. Attack of the Black Rectangles is phenomenal, not only, but especially because it's very timely, like censorship, especially soft censorship of books. The Girl in White was a good spooky book by Lindsay Curry. Abuela, Don't Forget, and No Filter and Other Lies were both the books by Latino and Latina authors, and both fantastic. Abuela was a memoir Rex Ogle is the one who wrote it, and gosh, it's fantastic. All of these books, like I don't know how I even figured out a favorite. And then No Filter and Other Lies is so also very timely book. Just about social media and who you are and how you present yourself. Other books I read that I want to mention, Nothing Can Possibly Go Wrong and Freestyle are some really great graphic novels. They both are kind of about finding your thing and finding your people, and I really enjoyed those. The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, I hadn't read that, so I'm glad I did. And then Caraval, I do want to read the second one. I hope it's good. I've heard mixed things. And One of Us is next. I love, oh my gosh, Karen McManus's, her thrillers are they thrillers? Yeah, thrillers. I love her writing and I love her books. So September was phenomenal. October, so I had to change my layout here, but I wanted to keep the little book format. I hope all of this is making sense for you. Anyway, October reads. I read 13 books by female authors. 4 of them were adult, 7 young adult, 8 middle grade, and 2 picture books. Some of my top reads here would have to be The Door of No Return by Kwame Alexander, because he's amazing. The First to Die at the End is... So I love the book They Both Die at the End. The First to Die at the End was a great prequel. Oh my gosh, I can't speak. And another one I loved was A Scatter of Light, which is also not really a companion, but kind of a companion to Last Night at the Telegraph Club. And then I reread Alone, which is a fantastic graphic novel in verse. And Garvey in the Dark was a really cool novel in verse that has the pandemic in it, which I thought, because I loved Garvey's Choice. And so this is a sequel, but set, really recently, even though Garvey's Choice is published quite a while ago. So I think that that's cool. I think it was done very well. And then if you're looking for any kind of cute romance, The Ex Hex was a lot of fun banter. I really enjoyed that book. So for November, I had 2 goals, reading more arcs and reading Indigenous authors, and I did pretty good. I read 4 arcs. The Last Housewife is adult. The Sacrifice and Monsters Born and Made were both young adult, and Monsters Born and Made I think could be also read by middle grade. The Sacrifice is pretty gory. And then Mirror to Mirror was a middle grade novel. It comes out later this year. I think the rest of these are already published. This one doesn't come out until March or April 2023. And then Indigenous authors, I read a graphic novel series. They're very short, like 60-something pages, called Surviving the City. And I really hope that there's more by this author. And it took place in Canada, so kind of like it was good in multiple ways, Indigenous and then Canadian writing as well. Other books I read, The Agathas and Blood Marts were both also young adult. Paul Murray was another novel in verse biography, and Paper Heart is a companion novel to Tornado Brain. No, I think. Paper Heart will break your heart. The companion novel that it's to will also tear you apart. It's dealing with grief and losing a friend. And what's really cool about these books is they're in twin perspectives. So they're twins. They both had a friendship with this girl who ends up passing away. And you get both their perspectives. One is during her passing away, and then this one, Paper Heart, is after. Goodness, if you want to cry, that's pretty much the book for you. December, I had goals of reading arcs and books I own, and I ended up reading 8 arcs and 3 books I owned. My favorites of the month for picture book was Yes We Will by Kelly Yang, and middle grade was Answers in the Pages. Young adult was All of Our Demise, and adult was House in the Cerulean Sea. Some other great books that I read: Chaos Theory and Dear Student and The Bluest Sky. And The Lies We Tell. Those were all fantastic books. So that was my year in books. Over 72,000 pages read, 271 books. A lot of favorites that I will, talk about and recommend to people. I wanted to narrow down to like one favorite book, but I just can't. So let me know what you thought about this episode. I know it's a long one, and I had fun looking back on my year in books. But again, let me know what you thought, the format and all of that. It's also my first year doing this, so I appreciate you all, and I hope 2023 is a great one for you. So that was my year in books. Over 72,000 pages read, 271 books. A lot of favorites that I will, talk about and recommend to people. I want